Lisa Kirkman's story, life after legalization, and we've got NDP's marijuana mistake, highlights of this week's Cannabis Digest video review. Dean Schwind brings us the first article for the week. Mama Kind Lisa Kirkman battles in the Badlands of Alberta for her health while raising a family, just trying to use a vaporizer. Lisa suffers from severe osteoarthritis and she's unable to ingest orally medications. So she turns to the vaporizer for cannabis, and that has worked well. This has been something which has worked previously in hospital with the nurses and doctors, but the Alberta Health Service has come out against her, and now she's fighting back. If you want to read more about this story and the details inherent is on the cannabisdigest.ca. There's a GoFundMe campaign that Lisa is attempting to raise money for. You may know Lisa because she has written a book, Sex Pot, and she's been well known as a writer for cannabis and sex. And so you might want to check that out and see find some ways that you can support Lisa in her journey for her health. Ted Smith brings us his textbook video once a week on the Hempology 101 YouTube channel. You can check that out here on YouTube, subscribe there, and subscribe here. You can get our weekly blogs and our weekly textbook lectures delivered to your YouTube page, your YouTube when you go sign in. So worth doing. Check out Ted's videos. This week he starts a series on hemp in the USA, as it was very founding to the pioneers using it for canvas, for not only the sales to get there, but then getting across the country. So he gives a good job of explaining it, so I'll let you check that out. Judith Stamps, the Cannabis Digest editor, brings us the magnificent failure of the Indian Hemp Drug Commission. To date, this commission is the largest done into cannabis, and it showed in its conclusions that cannabis isn't a terrible thing and that it shouldn't be criminalized. Well, this wasn't a very popular view, especially amongst the temperance movement at the time that would push forward alcohol legalization. Eventually was found to be a social failure, similar to cannabis prohibition at this time. So Judith gives us a very good run through of what happened in India with that commission and what happened around the world as a result of it. Many of the countries didn't pick it up, but only used snippets for their propaganda in order to associate cannabis with madness. And the conditions by which these studies were taken were not the best by a long shot. It's a very interesting read. I definitely recommend it. As always, Judith provides us with illustrations, and you should check that out yourself. Cannabisdigest.ca. The NDP's marijuana mistake. Dana Larson, sensible BC champion, has been writing for the Cannabis Digest in the front 2 pages of the new edition 42 for the autumn. You can check out this article, but it's also on the blogs. And what is NDP been doing? Not very much in terms of cannabis policy. They've backed down altogether. And now we have a liberal call for legalization. And Dana Larson, who ran for the NDP at one point, is now calling them out and their failure to represent the cannabis community and give us a voice, even though they had for a long time under Jack Layton had been that voice. And the popularity of cannabis is being shown through the ballot initiatives in the United States, where the vote for marijuana got more signatures than that for Obama in the last election. More votes for marijuana than Obama. So it's a big thing that the NDP could save themselves in some way and support cannabis more openly, but that doesn't seem to be happening. They say decriminalize which in terms of federal change wouldn't be as sufficient as the legalization call of the Liberals. So let's see what happens. What are your comments? You have any political views? Let's hear about them. Are Cheech and Chong still smoking? Well, Ted Smith interviewed them recently at the Royal Theatre in Victoria, BC, and I got to go with them and meet Cheech and Chong, and they seemed very kind. Well, Ted Smith asked some pretty serious questions. He's a medical marijuana activist, and he takes his life activism very seriously. The Cheech and Chong have often joked, and they're very funny in terms of cannabis, but recently Tommy Chong had cancer that he treated both with a naturopath that Ted Smith's partner Gail is also seeing, and also with cannabis oil, and the combination worked for Tommy Chong quite well. So Ted dives into this a little bit with Tommy and Cheech in this interview. Check it out. Hempology 101 YouTube channel, or subscribe to that one and this one. Subscribe. On to my article of the week. Can cannabis extracts be regulated? And this was something that came up in my court case a couple of years ago, and the government find that it's very difficult to regulate cannabis extracts because they want to be able to measure the amount that people have so that they can be sure that those people aren't using or selling more than they could use. So the cannabis extract being dissolved into a fluid form becomes more difficult. The police officer can easily weigh a bud and tell you that how much that is, but if it's dissolved, well, a police officer wouldn't know if it was a honey oil or a vegetable oil in most cases. So there's not training for it, and the government said they just have too much to do or something, but they can't do it. But the judge told them that's not enough. You can do it. It's not his job to enforce the laws. If it means that people who can't have their medicine have to suffer. So if it's been ruled upon, the government now has to respond by creating these regulations. And I give some examples of other jurisdictions in the United States that have regulations, including Washington State. You can have a six-pack, some kind of cannabis beverage. So it could be very reasonable, and it's not beyond you, government. So let's see it, and we'll hope in the next year or so before the Supreme Court that this argument will make an impact that will last in Canada. But then what after legalization? Well, Dean Schwind, who we had at the very beginning of the show, comes back again with an excellent article. He gives us 8 wonderful things that can happen when we have legalization. Imagine Mrs. Johnson, just from next door, leaning over the fence to comment, "My, your sativa looks the bomb, dear, and those tomatoes are huge." Well, that could be a reality, as well as you could use all of your activism skills to become a great artist, or you could grow your own garden, or you could do all number of things that you've developed through the many years of battling against the odds with cannabis. You've developed skills as an activist that beyond prohibition you can use to harness to make this world a better place. And once we have cannabis legal for medical use, we can work on having hemp grown in abundance in order to save the world. And that growth of hemp and that reduction of the carbon from the atmosphere all in one tight loop, we can help to restore balance to the earth. So keep working after legalization, because there's so much this plant has to offer for you, for your community, for the whole world. And this has been the Cannabis Digest video review. My name is Owen Smith. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos, and we'll be back next week. CannabisDigest.ca.